Hello and welcome to episode number five. I can't believe it's already episode number 5. And I have a fabulous guest for today's Why Sci-Fi. It's Robin from Bookspin. Hello, Robin. How are you?
Hi, Bart. I'm doing great today. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this. And I love your channel because your channel is unique. I think the way you blend, you do a lot of author interviews. I'd like to ask you about that. You also do single book reviews, which not too many people dive into these days. And you have some fabulous lists also, like your video that I think has garnered the most views is like a top 15 best science fiction books. And that video is spectacular.
First up at number 15, we have The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle.
Long story short, if you haven't seen Robin's channel, it's going to be linked down below. Check it out. Fabulous content. So welcome to Sci-Fi, Why Sci-Fi, episode number 5. And I think it's a good idea to start us off, just to warm it up a little bit, to get the energy going with some rapid fire questions. Are you up for that, Robin?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Awesome. So basic questions, modern science fiction or classics? What do you prefer to read? And let's say for the ease of this, let's say modern is from the year you were born on would be modern, and anything prior is classic.
That's an interesting definition you use, because I've used that definition before and I've never heard anyone else use it.
Oh,
and I like it because it's kind of subjective, but it's an arbitrary definition, but I think it makes sense. I like that definition.
Yeah, all these definitions are arbitrary. There isn't, an exact date when the golden age of sci-fi ended and new waves started, or the new golden age. So it's all arbitrary. So yeah, why not? So do tell me, do you prefer? Because you read both. I know you read both. Which one do you prefer?
This is a really difficult question, actually. I'd say I definitely read both. Looking at the books I've read so far this year, I think there's probably been slightly more in the way of classic SF. Like the last 3 books I read were from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But now I've just moved on to Peter F. Hamilton, which is 21st century. So, yeah, it's really hard to say because I love both. But if you're going to force me to say one or the other, I'm going to say classic.
Classic, okay. I wasn't sure what you were going to say, so that's interesting. Now, you mentioned Peter F. Hamilton, and that is my next question. You are, of course, you're in England, and there are 3 outstanding, well, not all of them are British, I suppose, but from United Kingdom authors that are writing right now. Which of the 3 do you prefer? I'm talking, of course, about Peter F. Hamilton, Eugene Tchaikovsky, and Alastair Reynolds. He's Welsh, I believe, but...
Yes, that's right. I would have to say Alastair Reynolds. I think I've read more of his books than the other authors, and I'm a big fan of his Revelation Space series and everything that's set in that universe. There's still a lot of his books I haven't read yet, but yeah, I would go as far as to say he's probably my favorite living author at the minute.
Oh wow, okay. So I'm glad I asked that question. Yeah, because I know you've interviewed. I also think you interviewed Tchaikovsky. Have you spoken with Peter F. Hamilton as well?
No. Well, I have met Peter F. Hamilton. I've not had him on my channel. So yeah, I met him at an event last September, and I got him to sign a few books, but I've never interviewed him.
Okay. Yeah, and I think now I should have guessed this one, because I think Aurora Rising, or The Prefect, as the title, original title is one of your favorite books also, isn't it? I read it recently. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Right, yeah. So when I made that top 15 video a while back, I can't remember exactly where I put it, but it was in the top 5.
Mm-hmm. It was number 2. I think it was number 2.
I'm not sure about that. I have to go back and check, but you may be right. But yeah, so a few years ago, I read through all of the Revelation Space books, and all of the books which were set in that universe, which now it totals about 10 of those books. And I think that was, out of all of them, that was probably my favorite. That was probably the standout for me. So when I made that list, I just wanted to pick one book per author, and so I chose that as my Alastair Reynolds representative.
It's a good one. I had a great time reading The Prefect or Aurora Rising. I thought it was awesome the way it combined the mystery, world building, space opera, written in a very snappy, fun kind of a way, and set in that world. Because I read Revelation Space, only the first book. I have to get back to reading more from Alastair Reynolds. House of Suns is one of my all-time favorites from him. I love House of Suns, but the Prefect was amazing as well. So yeah, he's a great choice. Did you want to add something to that?
Well, you know what? I've believe it or not, House of Suns is not one I've read by him yet, and I know that that's very highly regarded, and a lot of people, such as yourself, rank it extremely highly. And I'm planning to read it at some point. I don't yet have a copy, but I am due to meet Alastair Reynolds again at an event in September this year with my local SF group.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, one of my goals will be to get him to sign House of Suns and then add it to my TBR. So that might be my next Alastair Reynolds read.
That's a great plan. I love it. I hope you enjoy it too. I think it's a great story. That's a standalone, of course. That is just a lot of fun to read and great ideas, mind-blowing concepts. Yeah, I loved it. So anyway, this was supposed to be rapid fire. It never really is, and it isn't. We just like start talking.
It's so easy to get sidetracked. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go a little quicker. Aliens or AI? What do you prefer to read about it?
Again, it's a really difficult question, and I'm probably going to have to say aliens, and I think that's what pretty much all of your guests say.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because, you know, in the world we're living in today, AI is a hot topic, and it's kind of interesting to see where things are going with AI in the real world and speculate on that and stuff. But aliens, we have no experience at all with. I think it's more interesting as a thought experiment to speculate what might happen if we were to encounter alien intelligence. I think that's just so ripe for interesting story ideas. Of course, sentient robots are fascinating, but I think aliens, I think there's more scope there for interesting and sort of mind-bending ideas. So if you, again, I love both of them, but if I have to pick one or the other, I'll choose the aliens.
Yeah, that's a great answer, actually. The way you framed it, I think this is exactly why most people do feel that aliens, if we were to make that contact, that would be a game changer. Not just not in the way that obviously AI is already changing the world very quickly, and it's only speeding up, and who knows where it's going, and it's fascinating. And kind of we're living in a science fiction book right now, it seems, and who knows what's around the corner, who knows what next year, let alone 10 years from now, is going to bring. But still, aliens, I think, would change not only everything we know about us, but also our philosophy, religion. It would impact so many different, it wouldn't just be something that sci-fi guys like us are talking about. At that point, this would be an event, I think, that would be the most impactful event in the history of Homo sapiens, meaning someone from the outside. Anyway,
yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
see if that ever comes to pass in our lifetimes. Now, going back to books, I think I know the answer to this one, but maybe you've changed your mind since. Dune or Hyperion? Which book do you prefer? I think these are two like giants for me that people talk about.
Hyperion. So that's not much of a contest for me.
Yeah.
Hyperion was one of the books that got me into science fiction.
Okay.
It's it's basically the first big epic sci-fi space opera that I read. I think I was 22 at the time, so I hadn't really read a lot of sci-fi before then. I read Dune much later, in my 30s, and I liked it, but I'd read a lot of sci-fi since, and it didn't really blow me away in quite the same way. I love the new Dune movies. I love the atmosphere. The world building is second to none. But Hyperion is one of my all-time favorites. I put it at number one when I made that list, but it's long due a reread. So at some point in the next year or two, I plan to reread Hyperion and perhaps read the whole Cantos.
Yeah. So no argument from me, nothing to it. 100% great minds think alike. Do you prefer hard SF, kind of technical, or more soft side of SF, more literary or more character driven? If you have to choose one or the other.
Yeah. So again, it's a really tough one. And looking back at what I've read over the past year or two, I'd say a lot of it has been soft, on the softer side. And I'm interested in the questions, the thought experiments. What might happen? How would it impact society? Like what if we could travel through time, or make contact with alien intelligence, discover a parallel universe, or invent some kind of rejuvenation technology, and what have you? All of these, I think, are really fascinating ideas and ripe for great storytelling. And you combine them with compelling characters and a decent story, then I think you're onto a winner. I don't think you necessarily need scientific explanation or even plausibility necessarily to create a good story out of that. I think the story can be interesting on its own merits without scientific plausibility necessarily. And that said, like I said, Alastair Reynolds is one of my favorite writers, and he delves quite deep into the hard sci-fi.
Yeah, he has a science background himself, I think, from prior when he started writing, which obviously determines the type of works and how he views science fiction. So that's a fantastic answer. I agree. I think it's a difficult one to pick because not too many books really merge the two very well. And I think you mentioned Hyperion, and I think Hyperion to a certain extent does, because it is definitely has some elements of hard SF, not the hardest, but it does. That's setting the world. It's a proper SF story. But then you also have, it's beautifully written. The writing is great. You have poetry in it. Keats, those he alludes to so much from our past, and the characters are strong. The characters are fantastic in Hyperion. So if there's anyone watching who has not, for some reason, read Hyperion, give it a shot. I think it's a good one to try, because it merges a lot to love in Hyperion.
One thing that's almost unique about Hyperion is the way it blends different styles and subgenres of SF.
Yes.
Because we've got the Canterbury Tales structure in each story that the Pilgrim tells is quite unique, and it's a different style of science fiction. So it could be sci-fi horror or military sci-fi, or what have you. It's been a long time since I've read it, but that was one thing that I found quite compelling about Hyperion.
Yeah, there's detective story. There's a story that will break your heart. There's so much there. That's what I wanted to say exactly about Hyperion. Yeah. What you just said, it is a unique book that has, I think, crossover appeal, and I'd love to see a good movie made of Hyperion. I don't know if we're gonna get that. I think it's a difficult one, perhaps, to capture on film. What do you think? Could it be done?
Yeah, so possibly as a TV series. I don't know.
Okay.
I would be curious to see. Part of me just wants to gatekeep it. I don't want filmmakers to touch it, because I think whatever they do will be just a pale imitation of what the book is. But that's probably the wrong attitude to have, because any adaptation you have to accept on its own terms, right? So I mentioned Dune, for example. I love the Dune adaptation, or the new one.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, I think it's in the right hands. It's possible, certainly.
Yeah. And I think a good adaptation like Dune, both Dune 2, I thought was incredible. What it does also is, I love how it rejuvenates the book. When Dune movies came out, now the book is everywhere. So all these, and I'm assuming it's selling very well too. So many more people are introduced to science fiction that maybe otherwise would never pick up a sci-fi book, thinking that it's shallow or whatever the whatever the typical notions of why sci-fi is thought of as a lesser genre than literary fiction might be, can break down when you read a good book. And Hyperion would be, I think, a perfect one to break those boundaries firmly in the sci-fi world. But yeah, anyway, good stuff. Oh, and by the way, since we're talking about adaptations, did you watch the Three Body Problem, Remembrance of the Earth's Past, the first season? Not the
Yes,
Chinese, the Netflix, the American version.
the Netflix, yeah, I have watched it.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. I think they made some quite creative liberties about how they changed the characters and intertwine books 1 and 2 and what have you. And I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the books, but I enjoyed it for what it is, and it could have been a lot worse.
Oh yeah. But they did. I couldn't wait to see what happens with the scene with the ship. I don't want to get into it if anybody's watching hasn't seen it. But there's a lot of good.
It did make me very curious, having read Death's End, the final book. How on earth they're going to adapt that to the screen? Because there are things. Things get pretty wild in that book, and I have no idea how they're going to adapt it. So I'm curious to see where they take it from here.
I do too, and I think I liked it more than I expected to like it. I was afraid that it's a difficult one to adapt. There's so much happening, so many characters that in the book honestly they don't pop. They're kind of the character development is weak, so I wasn't sure if there's going to be enough to it. But I think they did a good job. I enjoyed it. Okay, last of those rapid fire questions. Traveling through time, I asked this because it's the thought experiment that I perhaps love more than any other, and I like to read time travel books, as I know you do too. Different takes on time travel. So, but if you had this one-time use of a time travel device, and you could take a look, spend a day in the past or in the future, which one would you choose, and why?
So if we're taking a day trip in time, I think I would probably choose to go into the future. How far into the future? I'm not sure. Probably, I wouldn't want to go too far. Maybe like 100 years or 200 years. I think there's a danger because I'm curious, right? I can read about history. I'm curious to see where humanity is heading and what's possible in the future. So if you go to the future for like on a day trip, you take that knowledge back to the present. That is some pretty powerful information that you've got right there. But if you take a day trip back, 100 years ago, I don't think that's quite as mind bending. I think I would definitely want to see the future.
Yeah, everyone has said that, and I agree. So I'm just playing devil's advocate here by saying that you said you could read about the past. We are reading about the future when we read science fiction, or the possible future also. So there is that. You could read about the future as well. And of course, there is the risk you have that one-time use. You might go into the future and there's nothing to see, whereas there's amazing, fascinating moments in history that I would also love to. It's more of a sure thing, I feel, if you're going into the past, whereas going into the future shows that you're a bit of a risk taker, because who knows, whether it's environmental or, we have the stuff in the news right now with the U.S. bombing Iran and its nuclear potential. I mean, the world is, I don't want to say I have kids and I'm optimistic, but you never know. It's a bit of a risk to go into the future. Even 100 years might be risky.
That's true. That's why I wouldn't want to go any further.
Yeah.
I think if you think about it too much, there are all kinds of problems or dangers you might encounter.
Yeah.
But just as a thought experiment, I'd say in the nearish future. And if you're going to go 100 years near,
of course, going into the past, then you're risking all those paradoxes of meeting some distant relative that you didn't even affecting your current timeline by going back into the future.
That's true, but you might also be creating a paradox by going to the future.
Yeah,
right, because you don't know what the future holds.
that's true. That's true. That's true. Time travel is a mind bender. I know it's also a book that you like, Claire North's The 15 Lives of Harry August. That was a fun read I read recently, and I remember putting it on my list actually to read because of your video. It was on your top 15. Spoilers for those who want to watch the video, but yes, Claire North. That's a good one.
I'm glad you mentioned that book, because I met Claire North just recently, only this month. She came to deliver a talk to my local SF group again. I've only read that one book by her so far, but I got her to sign my copy of the first 15 Lives of Harry August, and I got to have dinner with her before the meeting. So that was a huge privilege. And yeah, she's really nice, really friendly, quite a good public speaker. She's quite witty.
Okay.
And so I was really excited to meet her, and she's got a new book coming up this year, which is a space opera called Slow Gods.
Because I was going to ask you, is she a science fiction author? Because first 15 Lives of Harry August is definitely science fiction, but more on the softer side of SF, I suppose.
So yeah, she writes a bit of fantasy as well, historical fantasy. She's done a bit of YA. I think she actually started writing as a teenager, so she got published before she was 18 years old.
Wow.
I've not read a lot of her work, as I say, but I will definitely check out Slow Gods when it comes out, because that's her first foray into space opera.
What is it? What is the title?
Slow Gods.
Slow. Okay. Slow.
Yeah. I'm not sure what the exact release date is. I think it's supposed to be sometime in the autumn, like September, October, November. I see different release dates floating around, so
I'll look for it because the story was good, but also the writing is very strong. She's a good writer, so I'm definitely going to look for Slow Gods. Good title too. That doesn't hurt. So this is why sci-fi. Tell me, it could be brief. You could expand onto the question quite a bit. It's up to you. But why is science fiction? I'm presuming it's your favorite genre. Why do you love science fiction?
So I think it's inventive in a way that isn't really possible in other genres. Because science fiction allows you to explore scenarios that sort of raise questions about the future, what is possible, not just with technology and society, but also what it means to be human, right? And I think that, some of these questions, of course, are addressed in all types of literature, but sci-fi gets to experiment with things which don't tend to get explored in other genres, right? So as I mentioned before, I love thought experiments, and new technologies provide fascinating thought experiments. So if we could create a technology that makes rejuvenation possible, that's just an example. Not necessarily immortality, but just rejuvenation, so people can live extended lifespans. Now this question has been explored a lot in sci-fi, and I think it's a fascinating question. So we imagine what might happen, how this would impact our society and our future, and what it means to be human, the way we work, the way we live, the way we love, our family structures, everything. But then on top of that, if you've got really interesting characters, you've got well-written prose, and you've got a decent or an interesting plot, an engaging plot, then you've got all the ingredients for a great story. So I think you can find those other ingredients in other forms of fiction as well, but you won't necessarily find these fascinating thought experiments. So that is, for me, I think, what draws me to sci-fi as a genre.
Well, that's a great answer, actually. because that resonates very strongly with me. Yeah, and these thought experiments, like you talk about rejuvenation, but taking that also a step further, what happens when death isn't permanent? Because your consciousness has been up to the second is being uploaded, and even if you die, well, it might be painful, and the experience itself is shocking, but you can just be a month later in a new body, younger, with the same memories and the same, essentially, I suppose, the same. These thought experiments are incredible, and obviously, they're only being tackled by science fiction. So yeah, great answer. Yeah.
Well, I think I could use many examples, but that one came to my head because I just started reading Pandora's Star by Peter F. Hamilton, which I know you've also been reading because you mentioned it on your channel. And rejuvenation is one of the technologies that they have. And yeah, that got me thinking. So
I really enjoyed Pandora's Star. I'm going to be reading Judas Unchained probably soon. We're reading Anathema. Right now I have a buddy read, but I'm thinking I'm going to just jump in. These books are huge. All of them. Pandora's Star, 1,000. Anathema is like, and then Judas, and same thing. But there's so much there. So you're in for a treat. It's a great one, I thought. Okay. So let's see how good you are. Let's test your knowledge a little bit here, or your recall, perhaps. I want to ask you. I want to read first, I guess, just the first sentence from a book that I know you read. I apologize if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. And this one, when I read it, I didn't think it was very obvious. I'm hoping it's going to be difficult. The previous guest, Ira, I gave him layups. That was not good. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Here it goes. There were no windows in the Bryn 2 facility. Rotation meant the outside was always down, underfoot, out of mind.
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. There were no windows in the Bryn 2 facility. Rotation meant the outside was always down, underfoot, out of mind. I can give you
I'll be honest.
I'll give you a hint. Let me give you a small hint before you take a guess, because the chapter has a title. So this is chapter 1, and the title is Just a Barrel of Monkeys.
Okay, and this is definitely something I've read.
I hope so. I don't know. I think you read it.
Probably something I read a long time ago.
Yes.
It's an intriguing opener. I'll give you that. Do
you want to take a shot?
I don't know.
I'm
going to take a guess. Okay. So I'm probably going to get. I'm going to get this way off the mark. Okay. I'm going to say. Okay, I'll just say Hyperion because it's been about 15 years since I last read it, and my memory is very hazy, so it could be in there.
It's not Hyperion, but I'll give you one more shot. I'll give you one more shot. Chapter 2, first sentence. She is Portia, and she is hunting.
Oh, Children of Time.
Yeah.
Agent Tchaikovsky.
Children of Time. There it is. Yeah, the first sentence I think is very difficult. They're barrel of monkeys, if you recall. It's the monkeys that are supposed to end up on this planet. Be uplifted.
I remember that now. Yeah. And I was thinking space opera because what you said in that first sentence. And then I was trying to narrow it down in my head. But it was Children of Time.
It was a tough one.
As soon as you mentioned Portia.
You got it. You got it. You got it on the second sentence. So that definitely counts as a win. But let's see if one more for you. And this one, I think it's not easy, but might be easier than because I would not have gotten that first sentence of Children of Time for sure. So this is first sentence, part 1. When we were new, Rosa and I were mid-store on the magazine's table side and could see through more than half of the window.
I don't know that one.
When we were new, Rosa and I were mid-store on the magazine table side, and we could see through half the window.
I'm not even sure what to guess with that one.
Okay, I thought this one was difficult, but I thought maybe you'd get it also because we shot a video together about this one.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that Clara and the Sun?
Yes, Rosa was the other artificial friend. So they were mid-store, and then they moved up to the window. Do you remember she was in the window, kind of seeing people for the first time?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I suppose in that context. Yeah. That. Okay.
It's
fair
tough.
enough. Yeah. That's Yeah, I remember. Now that first chapter in Clara and the Sun, I really enjoyed that first chapter, and I think I think I said at the time that would stand alone as a short story. I think it would be a perfectly good short story.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah, I've forgotten that bit.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a couple of years since we read it together. I don't know if I would have gotten this one myself. I don't know. But yeah, good books. Both of these, obviously, great books. And Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, more on the literary side, more on the soft side. But I enjoyed it quite a bit. And Children of Time by Tchaikovsky, fabulous story of uplift of unique beings. So yeah, if you guys watching, if you haven't seen either one, check them out. If you've read any of the books we're talking about or have anything to add to our conversation, please leave a comment down below. I love to read comments, and I answer all of them, as I know Robin does too. So yeah, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about some of the answers that Robin's giving, or some of the books that we're discussing here. I asked you a couple of days ago to maybe prepare a book that you are proud of to own, whether it's because of its value or personal value or just monetary kind of or just whatever the reason why you're proud or happy to own it. I'd love to see what you've prepared for us.
Okay, so I've mentioned already in this video that I'm in this local SF group, which I feel quite privileged to be part of. I'm on the committee, right? And that's how I get to meet quite a lot of modern British science fiction authors. And so I've got quite a few books which I've got signed by different authors. So I thought, okay, I'll just pick something by Alastair Reynolds. I've got a few books signed by him. So the book I've chosen is perhaps the one, it's not necessarily my favorite of his books, but it's this book is in great condition. So for example, Aurora Rising, we talked about, it's one of my favorites. Yeah. I did get him to sign it, but it's just a standard mass market paperback. This is not a particularly fancy book, but it's this is the hardback release of Inhibitor Phase, which is a Revelation space novel. It's set after the main trilogy. This book came out quite a few years later after Alastair Reynolds did his original trilogy. So this one this is probably my best condition of his books that I own. So I've got him to sign this one.
The cover art is stunning. It really, the context is amazing.
So you can see he signed this to me. It said, "To Robin, very nice to meet you. AR, Birmingham, April 14th, 2023. Oh, we've got a bit of sunlight now. So yeah. Yeah, I just I like the cover. I like hardbacks in general, and I think this is probably among my collection of signed books, personally signed books, which I think are more meaningful than just a random signature. This might be my favorite, and it's a great read. This is, I think, perhaps underrated as a Revelation space book. People sometimes overlook it in terms of the original trilogy and some of his other stuff, but this is a really cracking novel. But I've got other books, like, for example, Children of Time. I did consider picking that because I got Adrian to sign that, and he drew a nice little doodle. He drew a cartoon of a spider So I could have chosen that one. I've also Peter F. Hamilton. He signed Pandora's Star and Jesus Unchained. So I'm quite lucky to be able to meet these like modern British authors writing today. And
do you feel that after you've met an author, well, not just perhaps met, because that's not enough, to sit in a bookstore and listen to an author, but you've actually went to, like you said, lunch or dinner with some of them. You've interviewed quite a few of them on your channel. When you speak to someone about their work, do you then, when you pick up another book by them, is it a little bit different, do you think? Does it change the way you read a book when you've gotten to know someone, interviewed or met in person, sat down with? Is there some bias? I don't know.
I think that's an interesting question. Yeah. Maybe on some level. I think, let's take, for example, one author who I've mentioned on my channel a few times is Alan Stroud. He's not a very well-known author, but he writes space opera. And I actually interviewed him myself, not for my channel, but for my SF group. So I met him in person. That's just before I'd read his books, right? So we sometimes reach out to up and coming authors, maybe as well as better known writers. And I found out about his work, about his Fractal series, and I got him to sign the books which I had, and which were given to me by his publisher for free. So that was nice. Anyway, the point is, he was a really nice guy, really friendly, really chatty, really easy to get on with. And more than that, speaking to him, I learned more about what got him into science fiction, his background, and the various other projects he's working in. So I felt like I got more of a sort of personal relationship with him, got to understand him a little bit better. So I think once I started reading his series, that may have given me a slightly different impression. If I just went in blind thinking, oh, just some guy wrote this book that I've never heard of. I think I don't know if it necessarily affected my opinion of the book or clouded my opinion or whatever, but it certainly influenced me in my decision to read his work.
Interesting.
And this sometimes happens, right? I watch, maybe not necessarily interview myself, but I watch interviews with authors online, and then I learn about their life, and that gets me interested in them, and then I explore their work. So it can have a direct influence on what I choose to read.
Yeah. Interesting. That makes sense. That's a great answer. I haven't met too many where I actually got a chance to speak with them. I think that's something that I would be interested in doing, exploring. But I do have to say that I notice, and not necessarily on your channel, but author interviews. I was speaking also with I think Whitney from Secret Sauce, just a direct interview. They're not terribly popular. I wonder why that is. Why people don't want to see an interview with an author, especially if they're popular. But what's your take on that?
It may just be that typically author interview videos tend to be quite long, like 45 minutes, an hour, and there's less of an appetite for long form content.
Yeah.
Which that's just a fact of YouTube in general, or BookTube. I think most of my interview videos don't get so many views, but when I interviewed Alastair Reynolds, that did do quite well. I think that's one of my most viewed videos. So, yeah, but I don't mind, because I really enjoy it, and there are people out there that enjoy watching them. So,
yeah, okay, cool. So short attention span of the viewers may have something to do with that.
I mean, yeah, you could put it that way. I would probably put it in. Well, I don't want to sound patronizing to people, but people there's less, like I said, there's less of an appetite for watching longer videos in general. But there is a target audience out there, an audience out there. So even if it's not a huge audience, they're still there. So I'm sure they appreciate it.
Yeah. So let's continue. I wonder, I love quotes also. Quotes I think are interesting because oftentimes they'll encapsulate somebody's thought processes, ideas into a kind of a short, compact form. So some quotes, of course, are corny, but good ones are good. And I wonder if you've heard this one. This quote is actually directly from a book. So I wonder if you can pick up which book this quote comes from. I probably wouldn't know, but it's a famous quote from a book, from a well-known book.
Yeah.
So here's the quote: "Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent."
I'm pretty sure I've heard it. Yeah. I'm sure I've heard that somewhere. I'm assuming it's going to be from a science fiction book. Otherwise, you wouldn't bring it up.
It's a science fiction book, and it's a well-known. It's one of the big ones. Classic.
Right. Okay. Classic. I'm going to have a guess because I don't know. I'm going to say Brave New World.
Oh, that's a good guess, but no, it's Foundation.
Yeah, I can see that now. I read Foundation last year, but I don't remember that bit. But yes,
violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. I think perhaps that's kind of like what we're seeing in the world right now. Anyway, sorry. No politics. If you were to bring one book and you don't know how long you're going to spend on this deserted island, or let's say for the purpose of this, and that's not you're going to be, we're shipping Robin off to Ceres, the biggest asteroid in the asteroid belt, and who knows how long it's going to be before they can pick you up from Ceres. What book are you bringing to this dwarf planet?
Right. So when you gave me this prompt earlier, my initial thought was, if I'm going to be there for a long time, I need a big book. So I'll just bring Pandora's Star, which I've just started reading. Think, okay, that will keep me busy.
Yeah.
But then looking at the parameters of the question, if it's just one book, I don't want to get to the end of Pandora's Star and then not move on to Judas Unchained because it's basically one story. So maybe I'm reading into it too much, but I thought, okay, I'll leave that. I won't pick a series book. So I decided to go for The Rediscovery of Man.
Oh, okay.
Which is the complete short science fiction of Cordwainer Smith.
Which you've been reading. You've been reading these recently.
Yeah. So these are all of his short stories. I've read quite a lot of them before already, but I've not read all of them. I'm working my way through them. I'm only 4 stories in at the minute, but I'm going through a reading project at the minute on my channel. I'm reading and reviewing every story in this collection. Mm-hmm. And Cordwainer Smith is one of my favorite classic writers, and he didn't write a whole lot. He died quite young, and he did a lot of things. His career expanded beyond just writing science fiction. He had quite an interesting military career, and he wrote in other genres. So he only wrote 1 novel in Australia and a bunch of short stories which are set in that world. But the short stories that I have read were fascinating, and I would say he's probably my favorite short story writer. And I really love his work. So I think I'll be quite happy to bring this along. It's quite a big chunky book as well, so it'll keep me busy.
Yeah, that is a fantastic book to bring. I think it might be for me, if I was to choose the books that some of the preceding guests have chosen, and then this one, I think I like yours the best. I'm trying to think
really
what the other books were, but I do well only because when you bring a chunky book of short stories, you're essentially bringing so many different ideas and different stories, because each story presumably dives into a different aspect of technologies or whatever. I haven't read any Cordwainer Smith. Australia is one that is on my. I'm hunting for it, but I don't have it and haven't read it. But basically, on that planet, on that series, you could be reading. It's as if you're reading, essence of so many books. Each story could be developed, and often they were developed into larger books, right? But in this case, you're getting the essence, the best parts of that story, kind of all the fat being trimmed, and you're getting so many ideas, so many stories, and you could hop through them. So this is a great answer. I like that quite a bit. I'm not a huge short story reader. I think at some point, maybe next year, it's probably not going to happen this year, I do want to start and read more short stories, but because I do enjoy them when I read them. But I don't know, there's something about them that did not appeal to me as much as diving into a book and kind of for a longer period of time being embraced by the author's vision of that one story, as opposed to these shorter ones. But on a deserted island and on series, I think it would be a perfect choice because you're essentially bringing so many stories with you, not just one. So
yeah, and these stories, for the most part, they're all set in the same universe and they interrelate to each other. Sometimes they can be read as standalones, but they're all connected as part of a grander narrative or story arc. So I think they've got that appeal to them. But apart from that, just Cordwainer Smith is such a fascinating writer. His world building is mind-bending and quite surreal, quite bizarre. And I think this is one key reason why he stands the test of time so well compared to many of his contemporaries. I don't think his work gets dated. I think it has a timeless appeal. And and I think short stories deserve more love in general on BookTube. So read Cordwainer Smith.
Okay, I will. Oh, for sure. And maybe the short stories are the way to go because you can get an idea of the author's voice quickly. Some short stories can be as short as a few pages, right? And really give a great impression of the author's voice. So I'm excited. There's just so much to read. I was on a trip to Poland. I spent time in Prague and Czech Republic also. Picked up some books. I have so many books to read, but Cordwainer Smith definitely is also someone that I'm on the lookout for. Now, you've spoiled earlier when we were talking your video, the top 15. I think you said Hyperion was number 1 on it. If you were putting that list together, would there be a book? Not necessarily because it's difficult. I'm not asking you to rank your number 1 book right now, but is there anything that you've read since that has approached the level of enjoyment of Hyperion? Would there be another book that could vie for that number 1 spot that you could think of?
Yeah, so I've read quite a few books which might enter that list if I were to make it again, and I probably will make it again at some point. But so Children of Time. When I first made that list, I hadn't read any A.G. Tchaikovsky. So Children of Time, I think, it definitely deserves to be in that list. Not sure if it'd be number 1 or not. I think I need to reread Hyperion. That's another thing. Before I make that list again, I need to reread Hyperion and see, am I seeing it through rose-tinted glasses, or is it really that mind-bending and standout that it is? I hope it is, but
I think it is. I've read it a couple of times and I reread it because I wanted to continue, I guess, the way you're planning. I read Hyperion years ago. Then in order to read Fall of Hyperion, I reread Hyperion and still loved it. Maybe even more than the first time. I found more in it. So it's great.
Okay, Children of Time would be a contender. What else might be? This is an underrated one, but there's a book I read last year called Spider-World. It's actually a series. Oh, yeah. Spider-World, The Tower. This is a book which no one really talks about. It came out in the 80s. Interesting thing is, it's also got sentient spiders in it.
Yeah.
Which you might guess from the title. It's a post-apocalyptic novel by Colin Wilson set on Earth, in a ruined Earth of the future, in which spiders have become intelligent And not only that, but they've subjugated humanity, which is quite a terrifying thought. So, and that's a 4-book series, vastly underrated. That would definitely be in the list. And I think another author I hadn't read at the time is Robert Silverberg.
Mm-hmm.
And he would probably make an appearance. Up the Line, his time travel novel, I read last year. Loved that. One of my favorite reads of last year. Oh, and one more. Philip K. Dick, who I didn't include in that list, but I think Ubik would definitely deserve a spot in that list. Yeah. So I've only read 2 books by him so far. I've read 2 Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, but I'm planning to read some more of him soon. So yeah, he definitely deserves a spot, doesn't he? Ubik that was my favorite read last year.
Oh, it's so fun. It's got great story. It's mind bending, but also funny at times. Ubik is amazing. I like Philip K. Dick. I've read, I think, 4 or 5 books. Every single one I liked to a certain extent. The 3 Stigmata, Palmerology was very good. I really like Maze of Death, which not a lot of people talk about, but interesting ideas. Philip K. Dick is amazing. I actually have a quote by Philip K. Dick here that I also like. I wrote this one down. So this isn't me asking, I'm reading the quote. If you think this universe is bad, you should see some of the other ones. Is a famous Philip K. Dick quote. And I think with his use of drugs and mind-altering substance, he probably is a good one to talk about visiting other worlds, even if they were all inside his consciousness. But he was a fascinating author, and his books are amazing. And I think he's a great example of why science fiction is such an amazing genre, because his books feel like a different genre of books. Like a Ubik feels like just a separate genre. It's a different type of book than Hyperion or Dune.
I think it deserves. Maybe you could call it existential science fiction. I don't know if that's a thing, but I think if it is, then Ubik deserves a place in that list. Yeah,
it's interesting. Cool. So tell us, we're slowly wrapping up. What are you reading now? You mentioned Cordwainer Smith. What are the plans for your channel for the second half of the year? We're already approaching July.
Like I said, I've just started Pandora's Star by Peter F. Hamilton, and that's going to take me ages to get through.
Yeah,
I'm not a really fast reader, and if you add in Judas Unchained as well, it's probably going to take me like all summer to get through that duology. But I'm reading some of the things on the side. Cordwainer Smith, we talked about. In terms of channel plans, reading plans, one book which I'm planning to read later this year will be City by Clifford Simak. I've got a buddy read coming up. I won't talk about too much here, but I'm hoping to get a few booktubers involved in that buddy read in September. I've been thinking ahead to, there's a few sort of sci-fi or SF horror novels which I really want to read. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I should save that for sort of Halloween sort of time, October. Professor Dowell's Head, the classic Russian story. I've read the original short story, the novelette, but I've not read the novelized form, which I now have, and I plan to read that later in the year. And possibly, I forget what it's called now. There's a classic 1950s post-apocalyptic. I Am Legend.
Okay.
Have you read I Am Legend?
I read it a long time ago. Time ago.
I don't have a copy, but that's one I really want to read. So I was thinking, okay, maybe I could save those 2 books for Halloween. In terms of channel plans, I haven't really thought that far ahead. I'll keep on making the Cordwainer Smith videos and just keep reviewing the books I read. And occasionally I reach out to authors to ask if they'd like to talk about a new release, put together an interview, but I've not really planned anything that far ahead yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you recently put out a video. I watched the beginning of it. I'm gonna go back to watch the whole thing because it was interesting. The author, I forget her name. I'm sorry.
Sylvia Park?
Well, it was Luminati or Luminary, something like that was the title of the book.
Luminous.
Luminous. Yeah. So I thought Yeah, that was an interesting interview that I want to finish watching. Would you recommend that book? Because sometimes it's difficult to
Certainly.
tell when you talk about a book with an author. It's it's a different experience.
Yeah. So that book is a novel on the theme of robots and AI, sentient AI, in the near future. It's set in a reunified Korea, and it's her debut novel, and it's definitely got quite a literary SF feel to it. So it does have some parallels to Clara and the Sun. So if you really enjoyed that, you might enjoy this as well.
Okay.
And it's quite a slow burn of a novel, so that may not appeal to all types of readers, but it is quite thought-provoking, and the characters are very complex and compelling, and it does raise some quite sort of philosophical questions about sentience, what it means to be human, and things like that. So I enjoyed it. Yeah, I can recommend it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and she was a good interview. I watched maybe like first 5 minutes. I'll go back. But yeah, and you have great plans. I mean, there's some good stuff. A City, I think, is by Simek is a good one to do on a body read. I enjoyed it. It's a stitch-up novel. It's short, but interesting. It's my favorite Simek.
Well, you know what? I would have approached you because we've done a few body reads in the past, but then I checked your channel. I realized you have already read it. So I was trying to find people who haven't already read it, because a lot of SF booktubers, it seems, already have. So I won't say who yet, but yeah, I managed to find a few people who are interested. Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna look forward to that video. Awesome. So listen, Robin, thank you so much for this. This was amazing. We've gone about an hour into this. I had a great time chatting with you. Your channel is fantastic. I always look forward to watching your videos. So I hope anyone who's watching, and most likely if you're watching anything on my channel, you're already subscribed to Robin's channel, Bookspin. But if you're not, I encourage you to check out the videos, and I will link the channel and the top 15, which is a tremendous video that so many people have watched. I think you have like 40,000 views or maybe more on that video. It's incredible.
Last time I checked, it was like 60,000 views, which is way beyond anything else. It's like the vast majority of my views is just that one video.
Well, it's a good one. Not only, I mean, it's just a fantastic. You did a great job with the video. I think videos, when it's a list, they tend to do a little bit better. But yours is great, and I do encourage everyone to check it out, because the choices are not always obvious. There are a couple of books maybe I'll throw out that I remember from the list that I put down on my list to read, because I haven't read them yet, but I will. I think you talked about Severance. You talked about Cabinet, something Closet Cabinet. I think like
the Cabinet.
The Cab. Yeah, there were some books that you talked about that sounded fascinating, that I added to my list because of that video. So yeah, I encourage everyone to check it out.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I did make that video a little while ago, so maybe I was. Yeah, it will have changed a lot. My tastes might have changed, evolved since then.
Yeah,
but
I think there's the recency bias also when we read books. It's difficult. There's no definitive list that will survive. And I think you should update it, because the first one did so well as a video, but also your mix of content was excellent, because some people who put together a list, it's skewed towards classic. Yours has this fantastic mix of newer, older titles, unexpected titles, and I think perhaps also that is why it's doing so well. Like, I mean, my most views videos is like 11,000 views or something. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on your channel. Thank you so much for visiting. Any last words for the viewers?
No, just thank you for having me on, and it's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, I love your channel as well. I remember I found out about your channel when you first commented on that video, the top 15 video.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I subscribed at that point, and I've watched almost every single video that you put out since then. So yeah, I'm a big fan of your channel.
Thank you. Same, obviously. So thank you again, Robin. This was a lot of fun. Episode 5 of Why Sci-Fi is in the books. Bye.
Bye-bye.